All right, welcome everyone. Today's topic for our LegalServer Tuesday training is going to be about SMS, or in common language, the text messaging tool. I'm going to walk through the functionality and kind of the setup, how it works and how you can set it up on your site. I do want to kind of highlight a few things. I've got a slide deck here, but I'm going to spend most of my time using our help pages and one of our demo sites to demonstrate the LegalServer functionality here. So the first thing I wanted to highlight, though, before I jump into the demonstration is for the text messaging integration with Twilio, we have a couple of requirements. You do need to have two phone numbers, one for your demo site and one for your live site. You also have to set up and complete the account information in LegalServer. You set up your account via Twilio. Twilio is the provider. It's kind of like your AT&T or Verizon. That's who actually offers the number, and the messages go in and out from Twilio. And our API basically has an integration within LegalServer that allows you to send and also receive and view messages within LegalServer. We'll talk more about the setup here in just a second, but I'm going to highlight that if you haven't already done so, setting up an account with Twilio is fairly simple. If you've already got an account, you can also take a look at this information. Twilio offers an impact access program, and you can get a Kickstart credit up to about $500 for nonprofit agencies out there. And so this is a good way to get some initial funds to start your text messaging. And text messaging, to be honest, is fairly cheap. It's only a few dollars a year for an actual phone number. And each individual text message sent or received is fractions of a penny. So that $500 can go a long way. So you want to just note that twilio.org/application is the place you'd want to go to start or look into information about that Kickstarter credit. And you can also start up your account with Twilio there. In LegalServer, there is a cost to add on the SMS text messaging feature. The cost is a $1,200 one-time setup fee. And then after that, there's a $50 maintenance fee per month. This module does need to be enabled by LegalServer. So it's not already part of your contract. You don't already have it enabled. You can file a ticket with LegalServer through your site asking for the module to be enabled. And one of us on the support or onboarding team will send you a change order form to complete. And you can set us in that setup fee, and we will get you going with the text messaging feature. Setting up the LegalServer side of things is not too complex, but there are some things that you want to know. This help page, the administrative setup, is where you'd start. There are a couple of things in LegalServer that you have to do, but typically people would start with the Twilio side. But this page is going to be very useful for allowing people to kind of get the pieces that they need set up in LegalServer. And this will allow people to set up the account in Twilio and then set up the little pieces, the requirements in LegalServer to allow you to send or review text messages from cases. I'm not going to walk through all of this help documentation, but I just wanted to point out it's here. This LegalServer setup information allows you to see the different pieces in LegalServer, the places you need to go, what you need to click on. And also there's a section down here about setting up Twilio within our help documentation. So this is the first thing that we'd want to do is set up our Twilio account, make sure we have the programmable number that's going to be used for our SMS tool. And then also make sure that we set up the webhook within the Twilio account so that LegalServer knows what to do with those incoming and outgoing messages that we're sending via our SMS messaging tool. There's a section on webhooks. Basically, it's just a little piece of code that tells Twilio when a message comes in, what are they supposed to do with it? And that's what LegalServer uses to identify those messages and where to put them in LegalServer. So this help documentation is very useful for the administrators or people that work on the back end of LegalServer. I will include that link in our chat box so you can look at that later on. But you can easily find any of the SMS or text messaging features within our helps about using the explore or search function. Just type in SMS, hit enter, you'll find multiple pages that have SMS information. We also have another page on our help site that's related to sending messages from an individual case. This is more from the user perspective. This is a great page to share with your staff that can tell them all about sending and viewing information in LegalServer. So this page is another good resource that will allow you to view kind of, without having it set up in your site, kind of what the functionality is, how it works, how you might use it in the future. So those are two help pages that might be very useful. to you in the future if you haven't already started using the text message feature. Now, jumping into our demo site, I will highlight that I'm using a generic demo site that is not going to look a lot like yours, and that's okay. Just as a reminder, all of LegalServer sites are very configurable, and so each one has its own unique look and feel based on the administrator's setup or configurations of that particular site. But the backend functionality is going to be the same, and that's the important note to take away. So one of the first things that you would do in LegalServer when setting up the text messaging feature once it's turned on is go into the admin section of your site and put in a few key pieces of information that will allow the text messaging feature to work. So once you have your Twilio account set up and that webhook entered on that programmable number in Twilio, we'd come into LegalServer under the larger admin section, look for SMS. That's going to take us to our admin page that will allow us to set up a few things. The telephony is a different functionality, so we're going to ignore that for now. Everything under the SMS header, though, is the important piece here. The first piece, and we'll talk more about this, allows me to determine who should get an alert if a new message is sent into LegalServer. The two choices we have currently are primary assignment or all assignments. We'll look at what those alerts look like in the near future here, but the idea is that you can control who should see the alerts on their homepage. Should it be the primary assignment only that's the primary assignment of the case, or should it be all the assignments on the case? You can make that distinction. You can make the decision what's going to work best for you. And if you have that set for just the primary assignment, what that means is when a new text message comes into LegalServer, whoever is the primary assignment on that case will then have a new alert show up on their homepage that says you have a new SMS or text message alert for this case. It will show the phone number it came from and the message that came in. So they can quickly see the information on their home screen and actually quickly navigate to the case that text message came in on if they need to reply. The other information is from the Twilio account, your Twilio account SID information. So this is provided by Twilio. We just copy and paste this into LegalServer. The authentication token is also provided by Twilio. Again, you just copy and paste this information into LegalServer. And then the phone number that we're using for your demo site or eventually your live site will go into this box here. These are required fields. You must have those filled in. Most sites won't have the autoresponder. That's an additional text messaging feature. You can check that out on a help page if you're interested in the autoresponder. It does require its own individual number. So if you choose to use that feature, you're going to have to purchase more numbers from Twilio. And there's also additional costs involved when you have more numbers and more text messages potentially coming in and out. A little bit further down, you have the ability to store your Twilio credentials. This is optional. It's just a place for your administrators to keep track of their username and password. Twilio does require multi-factor authentication, so there's no way that we at LegalServer can borrow your password and log in for you because we wouldn't know the code to get logged in. But if you need a secure place to store your credentials so that you can easily find those and get back into your Twilio account, this is a great place to put those. And then down at the bottom is where you can turn on things like the SMS calendar reminder feature, where you can use the SMS tool to send out calendar event reminders or task reminders from LegalServer. We'll also take a look at that feature here in the future. I'm going to scroll back here to my home page, and we're going to talk about the alerts first. You'll notice on the home screen here, I do see that there's a couple alerts that exist on this site. So a couple of messages come in for me as the primary assignment on some cases in the system. If I click on that link, it's going to show me those different alerts that are in the system. You'll notice that the first one is assigned to a couple different cases. It's from this particular number, and it's the message that was sent to us is it's great. And then the second alert is for these couple cases down here, and this is the number that was assigned to those cases, and the message was messaged to LS from the client. I will highlight, if you delete or dismiss the alert, they're gone forever. So it's one thing to think about when you're setting up those alerts. Should they be for all the assignments or just the primary assignment? It's an individual record, so if one person comes in and dismisses that alert, it will dismiss it for everyone. So that's why it's really something to think about and talk through your staff with so that they're aware that if they dismiss that alert, that's not something that they can get back. It doesn't mean that we're going to delete out that message or get rid of that message. It just means the alert on the home page will disappear for good. We'll come back and look at the alerts after we've actually played around with some text messages, but let's jump into a case and talk about how the SMS feature works. So I'm just going to grab this top case up here. I'm on Joan Smith's case on a particular profile. The one thing that we'll want to note is that an administrator will have to set up the auxiliary process and form that the SMS messages will be sent from. So under the actions menu, we have a form already set up under our SMS. You can call that whatever you want. You can call messages, text messages, SMS, whatever it makes the most sense for you and your staff. We've called it SMS just so it's easy to find on this particular site. This is the front end of the form. Before we get into the functionality, I'm going to show you the back end of the form because there's not a lot that actually controls this functionality here. As an administrator, I have the ability to edit any form in the system. So I'm going to go to my small admin button and click on the edit form link. That's going to take me to the back end where I can modify the functionality on this particular form. You'll notice there's only two active elements on this particular form. There's an instruction box where we have some information at the very top. And then below that is our SMS block. This is what controls everything else on that form. If I look at the configurations, I can turn on or off a couple different queues and logs and show the SMS consent. The queue, I'll show you on the front end, is basically showing any messages we have scheduled to go out at a later date. Once the message is sent, it will fall out of the queue and go into the log. The log shows all incoming and outgoing text messages that have been sent or received for this individual case. And then the show consent basically will allow me to show if the user has used a keyword and sent in something like stop or unsubscribe. LegalServer will look for that and will show you an error message if the person has unsubscribed or used stop. Those are common keywords that pretty much all text messaging platforms out there use. So words like stop or unsubscribe will basically not allow LegalServer to send a message out to that client. If the client wants to re-engage and they want to start up again, they can use the keyword start, things like that. But that's controlled via Twilio. That's not actually something that LegalServer controls. You can do a quick Google search and find all those different types of keywords that are out there for different SMS platforms, but those are the main ones: stop or unsubscribe or start, or how you can do that. So there's not a whole lot of configuration here besides turning on or off a few different features. I'm going to go back to the front end to show you what the form actually looks like. So the instruction was this element right here. You can think about how you might use that. Some groups will put in like their text messaging policy. They might put in some canned responses that they'll allow people to copy and paste into the message field. They might put in some groups have even gone as far as creating their own branched logic. You might want to consider having a question on your intake process, something like, does client agree to receive text messages, yes or no? If the answer is yes, then we could use branched logic to show this form. If the answer is no, then we could use branched logic to not show this form, to save yourself from inadvertently trying to send messages out to people that would not want to get them from us. You can kind of figure out how best to set that up, but there's often many different ways that people will accomplish that. But a simple custom field on the intake is a pretty simple and easy way to do that. Just think about something like, what's the question we want to ask the client? Do you agree to receive text messages? Are you interested in receiving text messages? Something to that effect. And then you can use that as branch logic to set up your form to only show this information if the client has agreed to receive text messages. A little bit further down, everything else that we see on the form besides that first sentence is controlled by that SMS block that we saw on the back end. Walking through this form, I'll just kind of highlight some of the things here. The SMS phone number is actually pulling in any mobile phone number that we've stored for the client. So if we look at the client's contact summary, you'll notice that this is the mobile phone number that we have stored on the client. Typically, that would be something you collect during the intake process. If we don't have a phone number there, this phone number field would end up blank. We could actually type in a number. We can actually use that field to send messages out to additional or different numbers on this case, but it is automatically going to pull in the mobile phone number for that client. So that's a quick, easy way to have that pre-populated so you don't have to type it in every time you're sending a message to the client. The message field is just an open text field. There is a limit to the number of characters that you can send out via text message in LegalServer. Currently, the limit right now is 1,600 characters, and that does include spaces, but that's quite a bit. So you can think about sending, short paragraphs of information. 1,600 characters will get you a long way. Those messages typically are sent out to the client's phone, and they'll see those, the full message as it was typed in here. Sometimes it depends on the smartphone, but most smartphones will automatically translate things like links. So if you put in a link to a outside resource, just type in, www.google.com, and they would be able to have a clickable link from their phone. And so when I talked about, some canned responses you could put into instruction boxes, that's what some groups might think about. Are there some common links that you might want to copy and paste into your message box? You can put those in an instruction box somewhere on this form so that a user can quickly copy and paste that information into the message box. But again, remember, there's a character limit of 1,600 characters. So anything beyond that, this box will not allow you to type in. So it's not going to be that you're going to type in 32,000 characters, but only the first 1,600 are sent. The box is going to limit you to 1,600 characters as you're typing or pasting information into the box. Before I send anything out, I'll just highlight the other things on the form, and then we'll test a couple messages out to a fake client. The schedule for later option allows me to schedule my message to be sent out at a later date. You'll notice I've got a date picker, so I can say I want to send this out on the coming Friday, and then I need to pick what time. This is defaulting to my time zone of my user. So my preferences are the Eastern time zone on this site, and that's why it's showing America, New York as my time zone. So I basically have to set what day I want to send it out, and what time of the day do I want to send that out. So a lot of groups will use that to automatically set up a message to remind the client of some sort of appointment or hearing or some other thing that they need to know about, and not have to remember or put in their calendar, send that message out at a later date. You can also just send that message now. So if we type in a message, hit the send now button, it will send it automatically from this particular page right to the client's phone. The queued log is going to show us any message that we scheduled to send out at a later date. And the SMS log at the bottom is going to show us all messages that have been sent or received on this particular case. There are other places where we can see these inbound and outbound messages, but I just want to highlight that on this form, this is only showing us inbound and outbound messages that have been sent to this client. You notice we've used this one a lot for different testing, so it's a good one to see some history of text messages on this particular client. Now, I know this is not a real phone number, so I'm going to type in my Google Voice number so we can see what it might look like on the client side of things too. But you'll notice because it allows me to overwrite this phone number, I don't always have to use just the client's mobile phone number. I can type in any mobile phone number that can receive text messages and send messages from this case out from LegalServer. Now, if a message comes back, LegalServer is going to look and say, where have we used this phone number before? Is it a mobile phone number on a case, or have we sent a text message to a client or a person from that case? And when a new message comes in, LegalServer will do its best to say, these are the cases that number was used for. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we see the alert, but I just want to schedule a message and also send one now so we can see what that will look like. So this is going to be a message we're going to schedule to send just a little bit later. So this is a message to send later. We'll say to the client. You can put as much information you need. Again, you can copy and paste hyperlinks in there if you want the user to have something to click on to go to maybe your website for additional resources. I'm going to schedule this one to send out slightly later today. So today on the 27th, I'm going to have that sent out at, let's say, 3:30 p.m. our time. And I'm going to schedule that message to be sent out at a later date. Now, if I scroll down here, you'll notice that in my queued log, I have a new message that's scheduled to go out at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. I can see who submitted the form. It's me, LegalServer staff. I can see what number it's going to be sent to, and I can also see the text of my message here. If I don't want to have one scheduled for later, if I just want to send one now, again, I'm going to replace that phone number for a real one. And I'm going to send that message out to my client. Would help if I could type. There we go. This is a message to the client from LegalServer. So we've got our phone number, we've got our message in there. I'm going to click my send now button. This message has now been sent out to the client. If I look down at my log, I can see that there's a new message been created. The direction is outbound using our API, sent by LegalServer staff from the LegalServer Twilio phone number from our demo site out to this client's phone number. And here's the message that was sent. It says queued, but this is the one that we just sent there. If I navigate to my Google Voice number, you'll notice here I've got a brand new message that's just come in. So imagine this is the client's smartphone. They've got a new message. They click on that. They can see that this is a new message from LegalServer. Again, every single message coming from LegalServer is going to come from one Twilio phone number. So it's always a good idea to, basically in your message, say who you are, why you're texting them. Maybe let them know they should put that number in their contacts, something like that. Or when you're talking to them during intake, you might want to mention that this is the phone number that you'll receive text messages from if they agree to receive text messages. But this is the message we've received from LegalServer. If the client has something to respond to, they can start typing a message back to that number. Again, it would help if I could type. All right, this is my message back from the client to LegalServer. I'm going to send that out. So that message has now been sent. This is my smartphone's basically queue of messages to that number, the message from LegalServer, and this is the message I just sent back. Now, if I go back to my case, we'll be able to see that message has come in, but I'm going to go back to the home screen so I can show you that we've got a new SMS alert up here. So before we just had 2, now we've got 3. Now we can see at the bottom here, this is the most recent message that has just come in. This is my message back from the client to LegalServer. Now I highlighted that if that phone number has been used to send or receive messages, LegalServer has no clue to know for sure what case it should go to. The unfortunate thing about text messaging or SMS is it's older technology and there's no threading like email. So LegalServer just only knows the unique identifier is the phone number that message is coming from. So LegalServer is automatically going to put it on all of the cases that that phone number has been used for SMS messaging. So right now, this message is on the Jones Smith case we've been playing with, but it's also on these 2 other test cases. This is the case we were working on, so I'm going to click back there and show you a couple other things about text messaging. If I take a look at my case notes, you'll notice that all of those incoming and outgoing text messages are also stored in the case notes list. I can see the date posted. The subject is always going to be SMS. It's going to tell me if it's either from the client, so an incoming message, or if it's to the client, an outgoing message. And I can see that in my case notes lists. Those case notes are going to be commingled with all the other types of case notes, but you can see that information that's been stored in our case notes here. I can also go back to my SMS form. If I click on that SMS form, scroll down to the log, we should be able to see we've still got our queued message ready to go out here in just a few more minutes. But if we look at our incoming outgoing message list here, we've got our outbound one we just sent, and right above that is our inbound message, the one that we just got back from the client. So this is the information on the case. Before this message goes out, I want to highlight one other place in LegalServer that may be useful to your administrative staff. You can turn on an SMS tab, and you see that up here on the top navigational bar. We don't often recommend this for all users, but I just want to highlight that this list is going to show me all the messages in the system that are scheduled and queued. So we can see when this message is set to go out, what the time and date it's supposed to be sent, or when it was scheduled to be sent, what case it's on, some other information about the case, and we also have a link to click on here to cancel that scheduled message. So if there ever is a case that you want to cancel a message that is scheduled to go out in a week or 2, this would be the place where you'd want to be able to do that. You can also then see all of the messages that have been sent out from the system. This is, again, a sent tab that's showing all of the messages for all the cases in the system. So it may not be necessary for all your users to have access to this, but at least your administrative staff should know this. And you can also see all the received messages that have come into the system. As I scroll down here, the one thing I want to highlight is there's a couple here that show up as a test message that are not linked to a case. This is a scenario that's an interesting one, but hypothetically, let's say that you send a message out to your client responds back and forth, and they say, hey, my friend Joe, hey Joe, you might want to contact the legal aid agency down the road. They might be able to help you with your issue. Here's their text messaging number. You can send them a message. If they send a message to LegalServer and LegalServer says there is no matching phone number in the system for that new person, there is no way for LegalServer to attach it to a case. So we'd highly recommend to your clients to maybe not, share that phone number out with other people. But if somebody does send you a message, it will show up in this log as a received text message, but it will not be attached to any particular case in the system. So that's one reason why your administrators might want to take a look at your received tab once in a while just to see that information. So again, the SMS tab is often used for administrators to see and to manage scheduled and queued messages that are sent to go out later, to also review sent and received messages for all of the cases within the system. This message now should be close to going out at 3:30 p.m. So we'll go back to our home screen here real quick. I'm going to go back to the case that we're on. I'm going to scroll back to Joan Smith. I also wanted to highlight one more thing that might be of interest to you. LegalServer also will accept messages that have attachments like images on the text message. So you'll notice down here that this text message has some received MMS. So instead of using SMS, which is simple message standard, it's using multimedia message standard, which allows to receive multimedia messages, which would be images in here. If we go back to our SMS tab, we can look for the log to see what information we might have about ones that might have an attachment. You'll notice that the log is not showing us that information about attachments. Those are just visible in the case notes, but anytime that there's a document or an image attached to a message, those will show up in the case notes and also in your documents folder on your case. We don't have the capability of sending multimedia message out from LegalServer, so there's no way to send an attachments out to a client from LegalServer. You can always put in a hyperlink to some location for them to go to a source of information, but we can't attach documents to send out. But the client could send back information. So a hypothetical might be, hey, could you take a picture of your release and send that back to us? If the client takes a picture on their smartphone, attaches it to a text message and sends it to you, that message will then be stored as a document on that case and also part of the case notes as an incoming message that you can see here. If I take a look at our documents folder, you'll notice down here, here's our Joan Smith case folder, and here's that received multimedia message. If I click on that, it's going to take me to the profile or the preview of that, just a cat picture, lovely, lovely. But that's an example of how a client might be able to send more information back to you just by attaching an image of a document. I will highlight, though, that every single cell phone provider decides on their own what documents are permissible, what type of attachments are permissible to send via MMS. So AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, if that even exists anymore, Cricket, they all have some different parameters. So some will allow PDF documents, some will not. We would always recommend, because it seems to be the standard, that all providers will allow for images that have been taken by a cell phone. So JPEG images or GIF images or those types of images all seem to be allowed by no matter what provider. PDF documents, it's hit or miss depending on the provider of your client's cell phone. So that's not something that we at LegalServer can control. That's controlled by the client's cell phone provider itself. So if they send you in a document attachment, say, hey, did you see the document? You can say, well, what type of document did you send me? I tried to copy a Word document and attach that. That may not work. You may say, hey, just take a picture of that document and send that picture to us, and that should work just fine. The other thing that may be of interest here is that if we scroll down, let's actually talk about event reminders. That's the other functionality in LegalServer that may be useful to you. So you can also use the SMS feature for calendar event reminders. So if I create a new event on this case, I can also use that reminder tool to send SMS messages out. So on a case, I've opened up our event create process. So you can see that this is for the case we're on. I can fill in the information here. What's the time of day of my event? Does it recur? Whatever I want here. Down at the very bottom, we have our advanced reminders turned on. If I click on the add reminder, This is where I can say what type of reminder I want to send. Is it relative to the event, so many days before or after the event, so many minutes, hours, days before, after, or a specific time. I also have some message templates. I'll show you these in a second, but the highlight that is important here is we can also include information out to the client if it's a client information that we want them to know about. So the reminder will allow us to send that message out to the client via SMS because they have a mobile phone number. I can also send that reminder to any staff that are on this particular assignment here. So you'll notice that I have the ability in LegalServer to use either SMS, the internal messaging tool, or as email to send that reminder. For the client, the only option I have is SMS. The other two are grayed out because we wouldn't be able to send them an internal message in LegalServer because there's no way for them to log in and see that. And we wouldn't want to potentially send them that information via email, and we don't have an email for that client on this case. But we do have a mobile number, so we could potentially send the reminder via SMS. If you want to use these reminders for staff, the only thing that's important to note is that on this user profile, on the user account in the system, you would have to have a phone number in the mobile number field for that user, and then the SMS tool will not be grayed out and they could use that. If we add additional people to our event, so let's just grab another person to add to this event. Here we go, attendees. I'm going to look for test. So test is a person we've added, and maybe if I could find Ivy, there we go. Ivy Arcado Ashton will be another person. We've added a couple more people here. You'll notice that they're automatically added to my reminder system down here. So these are all the attendees plus the client are available on my list. You'll notice that test doesn't have a mobile number on their account, so there's no way for me to send an SMS message out as a reminder. But Ivy has a mobile number on his account, so I could use SMS. We also have the ability to add outside recipients, which basically means you can type in any name, email address, or phone number, and then choose to also send your reminder out from this calendar event to the additional people that maybe are not technically attendees or users or clients within the system of LegalServer. So this is how we can use that SMS tool in a different way other than just on cases. Just a quick highlight here, message templates basically allow me to autofill the message box. You can type in whatever you want for your message, or you can use these templates, and the admin tab allows you to create your own message templates. We've got maybe a hearing reminder, for example. It basically is pulling in some things that will allow me to quickly populate that message box so I don't have to type it every time. So we've got the hearing reminder. It basically is pulling in some variables. The last name of the client, first name of the client has a hearing on, and the date and time and location from this event. We also have another example, which is not great, but it will give you an idea. This is a test in Spanish, and this should be in Spanish, but hey, it's only a test. So this is a quick way for you to pre-populate those message box. Choose who you want to send it to and what method or medium you want to send it from, and then when do you want to send that. Save your event, and you've automatically created your event reminders. This is an event that we created from a case. I'll just highlight that you can also use that same event process from the calendar. If we're not storing that event on the case, we're just creating it from the calendar itself. If I scroll down, you'll see here that we can also use that same functionality of the SMS reminder to our users in the system or outside recipients we want to add to those events. So the two places of importance to note is you can send and receive text messages from a case by using the send or view SMS auxiliary process from a case. You can also use the event reminder tool either from a case or from the calendar to use SMS to send out event reminders. And then to view those outgoing and incoming messages, you can see those in multiple places. You can see those messages on the case notes list. You can also see them in the log from the SMS auxiliary form, whatever you call that form. The log will be at the bottom. And then at the very, the other thing that's important to note is your home screen. If you have it set up, you're going to see alerts for any incoming messages that have been received by LegalServer for the cases that you are an assignment on, either the primary assignment or all assignments, depending on what you set up in the back end. That is the main stuff that I wanted to share about SMS. So I'm going to pause there and stop the recording. I will open it up for questions and concerns or thoughts. at this time. So if anyone has any thoughts or questions they want to shout out, feel free to unmute.